Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Mandar Singh Gupta, and today we will be discussing about what is immunity, the history of vaccines, and concepts about variolations, vaccinations, etc. There are lots of pathogenic elements around us living outside our body, inside our body. There can be even our own cells, they are going rogue and becoming cancerous. So immune system's work is to always fight with these pathogens and prevent them from destroying us. Just imagine a living organism. It is healthy, but when it dies, it is degraded. It is kind of engulfed by all the microorganisms. uh, the spores of fungus, they will germinate. All the bacteria inside them, they will start eating that animal or organism. So what happens in normal living organisms? Uh, Suppose a human being, we are not rotting, we are not decaying, so we are always fighting. Pathogens are always out there. They are right now on your skin, inside your stomach. Some of them are beneficial, some of them are opportunistic, and they can do any number of harmful things to you. But our body doesn't fall ill very uh, every now and then. But with this pandemic just showing us the importance of learning immunology, we know that there are certain times when our immune system is not enough or we need vaccines to protect them. So let's start by asking the basic question: what is immunity? So what is immunity? It came from a Latin word called immunis, and immunis means exempt. Like, suppose if you don't have to pay taxes, you are exempt from paying taxes. So it is exempt from being what? It's kind of a state of protection from infectious diseases or sometimes even cancers. So it needs a careful identification of its own self versus the non-self or the foreign pathogens. It should have a good memory and has its own innate and adaptive immune responses. The adaptive immune response, they have a immunological memory, and both this innate and adaptive responses, they rely on cellular and humoral components that we will discuss further into uh, another video. So those who have recovered from the plague could nurse the sick because they would not contract the disease a second time. This was the first written uh, reference to the phenomenon of immunity. Uh, it was told or written by Thucydides, who was a great historian of the great war of Peloponnesia. Now, self and non-self, this idea is very important because when the immune system works, it differentiates between self and non-self. Different effector mechanisms that kill the pathogen, they can be from innate and adaptive immunity. They neutralize and eliminate many threats. Generally, the immune system does not act against the individual's own antigens and tissues. But when it happens, it creates a condition called autoimmunity. Just an example like rheumatoid arthritis or you can say psoriasis, ankylosing spondylitis. Here, the body fails to recognize its own immune system and attacks it. Own cells and attacks it. So, what about the early history of vaccines? The process of variolation was historically performed by the Chinese and Turks in the 15th century, where the dried crusts derived from smallpox pustules were either inhaled or inserted into small cuts in the skin. This practice was identified and made popular in the Western countries by Lady Mary Wortley Montagu, who was the wife of the British ambassador in Constantinople, and she had the technique performed on her own children. And after that, it became popular in the West. So she was the real influencer then. Now, Edward Jenner, he was the first person who was going towards a systemic and scientific study of immunization. So he was intrigued by the fact that milkmaids who contracted the mild disease called cowpox. Here you can see the picture of a hand with this same cowpox that is found on the udders of a cow. So this is a very mild disease compared to smallpox where mortality rate is very high. So his idea was to like deliberately, if you infect somebody with a liquid little bit of fluid from the cowpox pustule into the people, uh, that will make them immune to smallpox. Sorry, there is a little bit of mistake out there. Now, Jenner inoculated an 8-year boy named Phipps, James Phipps, with fluid from a cowpox pustule from of a milkmaid named Sarah Nelms, and later intentionally infected the child with smallpox. As predicted, the child did not develop smallpox. Now, this test was repeated some not only once or twice but 20 times with the same result. And modern science doesn't do experiments like these on human beings, human subjects. There are ethical issues, but yes, this was a huge step towards developing vaccines. Like without actually getting infected by the real disease, you are getting infected by a milder form of some very closely related virus that will result into immunity developing against the deadly smallpox. This is how that uh, thing was done. You can pause here and look into this process again. uh, Now, Louis Pasteur and chicken cholera. Sometimes accidents happen, and these accidents actually help the scientists to leap forward a huge. Uh, mm, they make a huge improvement, like what happened with Louis Pasteur before going for a vacation. He left the culture of Pasturella maltosida. It is a gram-negative, non-motile, non-spore forming rod-shaped bacterium causing chicken cholera, and the animals are supposed to die when they are inoculated with this culture, bacterial culture. And what happened when he came back? He used a old culture, that is a aged culture of the same, and injected some chicken, and then they did not die. You can see the first picture. So they got exposed to the aged culture, but they did not develop any disease or die. Next, another problem came, like there is not enough chicken to do the next step of next experiment. He reused some of these previously exposed chicken. He thought that the previous experiment totally failed. So he reused some of those mixed with some of the new birds who were unexposed. And now the result is astonishing. The birds which were previously exposed, they did not die, no disease or death. So what happened to the fresh birds getting the fresh culture? This time they used fresh culture of the same bacteria. Now these birds which were previously unexposed to the aged culture of this cholera bacteria, they died. So Let's look into this picture again and see the age culture. Actually, this is called a attenuated strain. Attenuated means it is like made less potent in terms of infection and disease causing abilities, but they have their antigenic properties. They induce the immunity, in this chicken. They showed no kind of disease, or they did not die. Now when reused, mixed with new unexposed birds, the previously unexposed birds died when a fresh culture was used. Previously unexposed birds died due to a fresh culture was injected, but the exposed ones did not die. The exposed birds, they had the immunity in them because they were exposed to the antigens of the same bacteria, but that bacteria did not kill because it was attenuated for long exposure to the air. So this helped him to develop the vaccine. He named this attenuated strain of vaccine from the Latin word vacca, meaning cow, in honor of Jenner's work with cowpox inoculation. In 1885, Pasteur administered his first vaccine to a human, a young boy who had been repeatedly bitten by a rabid dog, and thus saving the little boy's life. Don't forget to subscribe and like.